Ms. Katie Agarwal is a partner at InfoEdge Ventures, a prominent VC firm with several epic founders. She has overseen investments in some of InfoEdge's leading portfolio companies such as Zomato, Policy Bazaar, Usta, Kirana, amongst other emerging stars. She is an alumni of IIM Ahmedabad, Hannibal Dev.
Awesome. So good afternoon, everyone. I think Karthik gave a great overview of how the fundraising process works from the point of a VC. Um, I, I mean, I would love to have all the startups in the room actually raise their hands so I know who's sitting where. Okay, awesome. And what's the stage generally that all of you are at? Is it really early? Have you raised funding? How many of you have raised any form of funding, external funding? Okay, a lot of people. And how many of you have raised a Series A, not a seed round, not an early angel round, but a Series A? Okay, got it. So super. I think Karthik gave a great perspective of how it works from a VC's perspective. But I would just love to talk more about how it should work from the company's perspective or the startup's perspective. And starting off, I actually want to make a very strange statement that you should not be trying for investors' money, you should be trying for the customer's money. Because if the customer's money is going to come, the investor will definitely come. And the best way to fundraise is not when you really need it, right? The best way to fundraise is when the investor really wants you. Like Karthik mentioned that, they missed Virohan in the first round and then they went back because those guys didn't need the money. And then, you can get your terms. And I guess it's easier said than done, but we'll run through, I think as we run through the presentation, is just a very short presentation in terms of how the broad ecosystem works. And then I'd love to talk about each of your experiences or the concerns you face or the questions you have specifically about your business model, your valuation, when you interacted with investors, what happened. And through those, I think it would be really great to work towards common learnings in terms of what others might have missed, right? Because each one of us has our individual experience and every firm is also different. Every stage is different. Every profile of investor is different. So I think we'll just try and lull out some common learnings at the end. So quickly going through this, just some fundraising conundrums that, I've generally heard people have. When should we raise funds? How much should we raise? Should we raise debt or equity? How do we find the right investors? How do we run our company or do we spend all the time fundraising? This is a very common question that solo founders especially have. So stages and types of funding, now that we are all familiar with this, there's a pre-seed round, which is usually when you haven't launched your product, you're at an idea stage, or maybe you've just launched early revenue, some traction. Seed is usually when you have some meaningful revenue, you have a certain cohort of customers, users who are engaged and you can scale that up. Series A is you have product market fit clearly. You have unit economics that you can prove. How much unit economics is how much do you sell your product for? How much does it cost to you? Cost means fully loaded cost, right? Salespeople, product delivery, everything included. And then are you making money on a variable basis on the product selling? And then series B, C, D, and so on. So when should you think about fundraise? I think this is very important. A lot of startups come when they hardly have 6 months of money left. And that immediately puts them into a very weak position. So any of you who's thinking of fundraising, you should try and hit the market when you have at least 6 to 12 months of money left. Even if you feel you have more milestones you want to get to, it's not a good idea to hit the market in a weak position with your runway. The market sentiment. Now, if the market is really cold, I would say in today's environment, early stage is still okay. So the pre-seed, seed, I would say it's still okay. But A, B, and so on has really slowed down because of the environment. So try and postpone your fundraise. Now, what does it mean to postpone your fundraise? You need to increase your cash runway. How do you increase your cash runway? Be brutal on your fixed costs. Be brutal on the pricing of the product. Don't think you're going to get free users today or subsidized users today and make money from them tomorrow, because the market is so tough right now that you might not actually see the tomorrow to do that. So we are advising all our, and whatever I'm telling you, we are advising the same to all our portfolio startups. To give you a sense, today InfoEdge over 14 years has invested in about 50 to 60 startups. Some of the couple of those that have gone to become big as Zomato and Policy Bazaar, but then there's a whole gamut of early stage companies today. And we are generally telling people that don't try and ramp up revenue in the hope of valuation or what you can show investors. Show profitability on a unit level, reduce your fixed costs. All investors in today's environment understand why you're doing it, and they actually value the fact that the founders can adjust to the environment and are making these adjustments. Now, founder bandwidth. This is always a very tough one. Whenever you are going to go to the market for fundraising, it's going to literally take up 25 to 50% minimum of your time. So you have to be able to delegate. Before you go into fundraising, 2, 3 things are very important. One, delegate. Who's going to handle the key tasks when you're busy fundraising? Second, who is going to handle the data requirements? Because any investor you're going to go to is going to ask you multiple sets of questions and lots of data. So go prepared, right? You cannot take a week, you cannot take 2 weeks to send back data, and that also data that is incomplete, etc. Just gives a very negative image of the founding team, the startup, etc. So you want to go completely well prepared. Now, how much are you going to raise? I think this is honestly very subjective, right? It also depends a lot on whether it is the capital providers market or it was the 2021 days when it was literally the startups market. So a lot of startups we saw would come and tell us, oh, I have this term sheet. You have a week if you want to do this and you want to do it at better terms, versus today where people are like, oh, we understand that having an institutional investor makes a lot of difference. You can bring in other networks. You can do follow-on rounds. So we are willing to wait for you, right? So I would say how much you want to raise. Some broad rule of thumb is you should try and raise for at least 18 months. So figure out your capital requirements of 18 months. And in those 18 months, please do not build in everything you want to do. That's not the idea. You need to figure out what is your product at an early stage that you want to scale. And do a grounds up forecasting in terms of how much money you're going to need. So what does grounds up forecasting mean? Product development, engineering. Typically, the ratio should be 1:3, right? So 1 product person to 3 engineering folks. How much do you need? What is the usual salary you pay? Where are you going to hire them out of, right? What's your strategy? You don't need to go to the IITs necessarily. You can have a great catchment. I've seen some of the best companies be very lean on their engineering costs by going to these these colleges around them and picking up freshers, training them on the job, and those people actually stay on and make a big difference. Second key head would be sales. So how are you going to build your sales? How many people you're going to need to hire? Whether it is feet on street, whether it is a call center you're planning to build, what kind of productivity? So I'm just telling you guys how to think of the building blocks when you build your business model and you decide how much you need to raise or not need to raise, right? And then the third key thing is generally leadership hiring. In the initial days, of course, everyone stay lean on cost, no strategy people, no chief of staff, no all of that jazz needed. Just have core leadership sales, like you need to have a regional sales manager. Don't even need a national sales head at that stage. You don't need a chief product officer, CTO, etc. You're good with a VP product. You're good with an engineering head, mid to mid-level person who has the ability to hire 2, 3 good people under them is good enough, right? And so you build your plan up like that for 18 months. And that is the amount you should ideally be looking to raise. Now, usage of funds, be very clear when you're going to an investor, how are you going to use the funds? But if you build the business model up just broadly, how I just said it, I think you should be good with explaining the usage of funds. The sharper you are in terms of explaining how you're going to use the funds, the better it is for an investor to understand how much in control you are of your own business. It is very surprising how we see people come up and say, oh, I want to raise $1 million and I only want to dilute, let's say 15-20%. But when you ask them, what are you going to do with it? The answer is so high level and they themselves don't know. They just tell us, oh, 300K for hiring, 300K for marketing, but it's just not as well thought through. So try and be way more thought through about your usage of funds. And lastly, the dilution. I think this is again, honestly, a function of the market and the investor you're getting. In today's market, uh, I would not over negotiate. If you're getting money, if you're getting a good investor in, it is okay to dilute a little more and give them enough skin in the game if that's a key condition they want to come in with, because the benefits that can come out of it in the long run far outweigh everything else. Also, to give you, a couple of instances, like in both Zomato and Policy Bazaar, pre-IPO, we actually gave a very meaningful top-up to the management in terms of the shares they held. And the same happened in companies like Paytm, Delivery, which are like backed by other investors, because all early stage investors, pretty much, if you have made money for them and if you have gone all the long way, you've built a great business, no one shies away from rewarding the founding team. So at the early stages, please do not over optimize for shareholding 1%, 2%. I know it hurts. I know everyone's very sensitive to it, but just play the long game and get to your ultimate goal of building a large, valuable business. Yeah.
For a early stage, sometimes it's very difficult to define valuation. What do you call safe notes or convertible?
I think it's if that's what you're getting, usually, it also depends from investor to investor. For example, as InfoEdge, we do not do convertibles and we don't do safe notes because we think it puts a lot of pressure on the founder to raise their next round, right? Because you have a certain discount and you have a structure to it and you're always on a ticking timeline for it. But if that's the money you're getting, then there's no harm to it because you're essentially indexing to your next round and you're at least getting the capital you want. So especially if you're, let's say, weighing between some form of debt and some kind of convertible, even if the convertible is in some stricter terms, I would advise personally to go in for the convertible, because as an early stage startup, you're loss making, right? And your ability to service any form of debt is negligible. You're literally paying your equity money for interest on the debt you have taken, which pretty much makes no sense, right? But we all do it. We all know we all do it. So if you have a convertible option on the table, negotiate well on the discount structure, on the floor, on the cap, etc. But it's not a bad structure.
If I can add PDF. So I think what at least we advise in founders at the pre-stage seed level, right? If you're not raising money for institutional investors, low price, or plus we're seeing crazy valuations coming there, right? It's not tenable in the future. So probably there you can think of a convertible and maybe to react to that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, especially if you're raising from individuals or micro VCs who would want validation for your next round anyway. So someone like InfoEdge would not necessarily want it, but others like individuals, etc., they want it. So you can ask them to make it a convertible, but be flexible. Honestly, it's more a capital provider's market, so that flexibility helps. This is just how you're starting the journey. I think this is, we've covered quite a lot of it. Closing the deal, I think choosing the right partner is very important. Karthik also alluded to it at one point in his conversation, that it's not just about the valuation or the terms from our side, it's also about the chemistry with the founders. And so, choose an investor who understands your market, who understands what you're trying to build. You gel with that person, even if the valuation is slightly lower than what someone else might be willing to give you, because it really helps, especially when you're going through tough times. When you're going through challenges, you'll just get so much more empathy, and you'll also get a thought partner who will be able to be creative with you in terms of thinking about your business. That you're doing this today, okay, ye bhi kar sakte ho, right? You can add on this, or you can connect with these two new people. They'll be more involved. So overall, you should focus on choosing the right people and negotiating. I think all founders are intuitively very good at it. Some of them push it too much, so don't push it too much based on the environment. So this is just the last slide. What not to do. I think key is valuation over everything else. The reason I've written this here is because it is very obvious when you write it, but when you're in the process, it's not that obvious. And, it's very tempting to go with the person who is willing to offer you a crazy valuation. But think about what your next round is going to be like. Think about what you're really trying to be like, because there'll be a lot of pressure. Valuation comes with pressure. No one is going to give you a crazy valuation and sit back and say, okay, ab mera ho gaya, right? They're going to say, acha, abhi yahan se 10x, how are you going to get there? So be mindful about that. Do not underestimate the process. It's a very tough process, very, very challenging. Lots of empathy for the founders who go through it, because you'll feel like something is closing, then it will not close. You'll feel like you're stuck on a term. Why can't someone just give it up? So there's lots of back and forth in the process. Keep your patience, be prepared. Prepare yourself there for a 3 to 6 month timeline in terms of when you first try and pitch to the time you're going to close with money in the bank. Cut corners or misrepresent data. I think, again, Karthik spoke pretty extensively about this. This is a strict no-no. Even if you're trying to be creative in terms of how you're going to show metrics, even if you have competitors who have been creative and gotten money, please do not go down that rabbit hole. It's a very common thing I hear when I ask founders that, listen, this is market strategy, didn't you know that you had to do this? And they name 3 other people who raised a lot of money and how they were doing the same thing, but that doesn't matter. It's about your own integrity and what kind of trust you can build across the table. And so don't take chances with any kind of creativity on the data. Do not go too much back and forth is not good. You want to close a fundraising round when there is interest and when the other party is really warm. So just make sure that, this is taken care of, and break trust with your VCs. I think if you do everything above and, all of that. So this is broadly the presentation. Didn't do something too long, but would love to actually take questions from each of you about when you went through the process. Did you have a doubt?
Yeah, so at first, so before you ask, let me first handkerchiefs that will be placed. And then other brands in what we brought into the handkerchief.
Yeah. I will.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. And then please told her that the low profit should be short. And this is so noble. We thought about it all the big bustle. So all of you may have heard me this in sharing, but feel free to share advice if you want. Because our ability to respond from each of you is the meaning perfectly. The quality conversation they read enough. So if you're keen to start with, you start off. Don't do it. Get way to this previous question, get answered, or then get answered. So this thing comfort here in this.
Yeah. I think everyone should just be very candid, because that's how we learn from each other, and that's how you'll also be able to get some insights, hopefully, about how to do something better the next time.
So our first basic was a safeguard, right? We were very technical with the company because you may have read the paper right now. So I'm Rohan, Dr. Pasoda. What we do is we upskill the mass market of India on based on sexy jobs, like non-IT jobs, or the very aspirational job, and we eventually get them. So our top selling right? So the 2 top selling ones are operation management and the marketing.
And you place the people.
But yeah, we place the people of BNS. Okay. So now my question is regarding the last thing you spoke about, which is a 3 to 6 month period, right? Yeah. So obviously early stage companies like us, and now when we feel like we're getting something between 3-6 months, there's a day and night difference in the numbers.
Yep.
So how do VCs price that? How do you put a number on that? Because from the time I put a term sheet for due diligence ending is again, the company is a legend company.
Yeah.
Versus with the state round, we could was the entire process in just a number.
Yeah.
Right. So what's the thought process there?
Yeah, so I'll actually tell you what happens, and this is not very subjective, this is pretty objective. When you sign a term sheet, the numbers that you have when you're signing are the numbers that your valuation, etc., and your round construct will be based off. There will not be any scope of negotiation with any institution out there, even if they have taken 6 months to closing from then, right? Only in very extreme cases, market is great, you have great investor interest, you're a superstar founder, you go back and say, okay, you have taken unreasonably long, and so I want a repricing of my round, in which case also there'll be a lot of heartburn. So in my 10 plus year history of investing, I've been doing it for 10 plus years, I have never repriced. Okay, and it has taken 6 months plus. I've never seen any other investor repricing. I've seen rounds falling through because of repeated attempts to ask for repricing. Because the key thing to remember here is also that if your business would have gone down, it's not like we would have penalized you. So if an investor is wanting to come back and renegotiate the other way with you, unless you really desperately need the money, you should also assess the quality of the partner, right? Hopefully you're partnering for the next 5 to 10 years. At least as an institution, I would say it's like 7 to 10 years at an early stage. So any movement in metrics, either way, between term sheet and closing, if it is leading to renegotiation, then both sides don't take it well, right? So just be sure that after the term sheet, you're very responsive, your lawyers are very responsive, don't over negotiate. That's what I tell my portfolio founders when they're raising follow-ons, that let's just move, right, and close. Because you don't get any benefit, unfortunately, for up movement, but you don't get penalized for down as well.
And what really takes two down?
See, I think one is the factor of the environment.
Just use the mic.
Oh, yeah.
And little Dobbin, that's got some date and years with get covered.
More natural than
Yeah, no. Okay, it's okay. Just use this mic.
yeah. So yeah, that was the question. What really takes which ones?
So, between term sheet to, I think, due diligence nowadays, I mean, depends on the stage. Again, due diligence would take 1 to 2 months. Documentation, depending on the number of stakeholders, can take very long. Because every set of stakeholders will have different rights. Based on the check size they are putting in, stage they have come in, profile of the investor, can they do much more follow-ons in the future? Versus someone who cannot put any more money, are you paying to play? All of those things take a lot of time. And then the negotiation with the founders, because as you keep going forward in your fundraising process, the rights that a lot of institutions ask for, like, people are going to make you sign on things like, in 5 years, if you don't do an IPO, we are going to drag your company. This is a very standard clause. No one ever does it. In India, it doesn't even hold in the code. That's a different thing. But still, the fact that you have to sign something like that. Now, a lot of people will negotiate this. If not 5, make it 7. Some people will have an IRR associated with it. They'll say, no, I don't want the IRR. So this is on one clause. And then the documentation is going to have 20 such big clauses where a lot of negotiation happens, which is what minimum it takes 3 months. But yeah, it can stretch up.
Yeah. Find him up first. I want to ask how a founder can say which you can that offer. Because at the venture capital you have to listen to the wealth invested the founder. In the master, we have to admit it. So the vision will see get impacted. So how to safeguard our equity? Because we have seen the case of Steve Rowan or Steve Jobs that they want to be doing that in their companies. So how will we safeguard that?
So, that is actually, I think, your question is relevant in that, a lot of founders have started looking at external investors as sharky at times. And the fact that, if they come in, God knows my company ko kya ho jayega type, But the best of investors, and in fact, the standard is that people don't want to be sharky. You are going to be one out of 20 to 30 portfolio companies for an investor who's building reputation over decades, right? No one without any provocation or without any misdoing or wrongdoing or necessary steps that they need to take, trust me, no investor wants to get involved operationally or wants the founder to leave, someone else to come in. So, on a case-to-case basis, you need to also look at what maybe could have led to certain repercussions. And of course, we can all debate if the repercussions were too extreme or not. But did that event to actually get the repercussion going, did that happen or not? And was it ethical? Was it kosher or not? So when you get investors in, you should generally start off very positively. You should start off like, getting into a partnership with someone who's going to be a shareholder in your company. And over time, the partnership is very creative. Actually, a lot of times we are telling our founders that, why are you only thinking of this market? Why don't you think that this other thing is also your market? Or why don't you just, with some tweaks, you can add this onto your product. It significantly expands your value prop. Why don't you go try Middle East? Your product seems to have a great fit there. Let me make these 5 connects for you. So a lot of the visions actually get enlarged also, and it's just about how you are also conducting yourself as a founder. Once you have partners and shareholders in, it's going to be a give and take. You're not going to be able to always get your way, but at the same time, it's not always good also that the founder is getting his or her way. So I don't think the vision gets diluted. Honestly, I've seen vision getting expanded way more. And how to protect your equity, I think don't raise too much. Very simple. We tell our founders, please do not raise if you don't need to raise. There is no glory in going out and benchmarking your valuation and saying, oh, I am worth $100 million, $500 million. The only use I see for that is employee ESOPs, right? When you're granting the ESOPs, the employees see real value there and, your pricing is better. But apart from that, please do not raise if you don't need to raise. Go into an IPO with majority shareholding. That's the crowning glory.
Hi, this is Abhishek Srivastava. You are co-founder of the BFA. And also we are a program with the service and TVP SaaS. So we are an ecosystem partner. We have to say that tech companies and give it some profit. So all I was in debates. So my question actually is what you grew over a period of time after Arctic session and your session. Whatever organization that had with VCs or a more structured institutional capital. Seems like a B2B SaaS player becomes a difficult sell for them because they're looking at crazy amounts of scale. But a B2B SaaS company, they pick profitability first and scale data. It's already happened, right? So as a founder, do we still have an opportunity where we're saying we may give you profitable scale, but I will give you crazy scale and to the point. So my valuation is based on profitability, like the city on Ethereum over the scale. And if that is not the story which says that it's another story, it's another more, and that's fine.
Sure.
Then I'll be what's straight answer from anyone.
Yeah.
And I know it's not an easy answer because the B2C model is a proven easy.
No, I've come across quite a few cases, right? And I also have a few cases in my own portfolio, which are exactly where you are, right? SaaS companies, they don't need that much capital to get to profitability, but their scale is always a question unless the market is clearly overseas, right? So I think maybe the large funds may not be relevant for you at this point because they are looking for billion-dollar outcomes because their funds are large. But at the same time, are there other pockets of capital that could be interested in investing in you? Of course. Now, I imagine, sir, that for an NIIT, a company that is profitable can grow, let's say, 2 to 3x year on year of a small base, but does it profitably, capital efficiently is very valuable probably. At InfoEdge, which also has operating companies, when we look at strategic investments, we don't necessarily look for scale. We look for profitability, we look for capital efficiency. And so maybe you need to change the profile of investor you ideally want to approach. And second, I wouldn't recommend anyone to change their story for an investor because building a business is hard. And the fact that you've built a profitable business is of a lot of value, right? Now, you don't want someone to come in tomorrow and tell you that, oh, I'm going to give you $2 million. Why don't you go and try and burn it all in the US? What happens to your India business then? What happens to the profitability, your own shareholding, etc., etc.? What's the direction you're going to take? Don't mess that up. I think just knock more doors and be very sharp with your pitch and your vision, right? And find partners who can help you now go on to the next phase of the journey. So there are many specialized B2B funds. Maybe they are the right answer for you. They have the right networks. They can evaluate your product and tell you if it is apt for any other market where they can make introductions. It's very common. I'm happy to connect with you separately and sort of help you with a few of those introductions. I just think you need to knock different doors.
This effect to the blueprint. Wait with me. So you're saying adjacency is important to provide strategic investors or larger companies, let's say, for which are more clear.
Yeah, and even financial investors. But maybe the Blooms of the world, Sequoias of the world are not relevant for you. because they are large financial investors. They have to return hundreds of millions of dollars. You will not be able to make a difference in their fund. And honestly, I would not even recommend that you take that capital, even if you are getting it, because it's going to come as an optionality for them. It can help you get associated with a good investor brand. But will that investor be involved and interested in helping you figure out a new market? In B2B SaaS, I've generally seen it helps to figure out a new market. If not more than adjacency in product, see cross-selling, upselling, etc., I'm sure you're anyway doing. But to figure out if the Middle East, usually I've seen people go to the Middle East from India, after India. So figure out if the Middle East can be a good market and slowly keep growing.
That is it.
Thank you. And I really appreciate you doing this really with under the second. I have one question. So I'm Piyush now started it. Do you provide easy candidates to tech companies and it's what easier candidates psychographics and on those to reduce that gap? So my question is, what is the outlook of VCs for a company who is to get a pivot after raising a PC round? And because after raising the PC round, we try certain stuff and we understand that this is the roadmap. So we take maybe sometimes two pivots. So what is the VC's outlook? How?
That's fine. I think at the pre-seed, seed stage, we all expect that your first product will never be your final product. Zomato started with reviews portals. Today they are a food delivery company. Policy Bazaar started with just insurance comparison, doing lead selling. Today they are a full stack sales machinery and do non-insurance as well. So that's absolutely okay. The VC only cares about what you're building when you go to them. And how scalable that is, have you got that figured out? Awesome. Is there anyone else?
My name is Ashish from Vani. Think of herself as identifying for learning how to communicate effectively. We call it communication fitness. What are some of the approaches, if you could give one or two examples, to evaluate the signs of an opportunity where this coming trouble is that when we talk to some people, they feel that it's a humongous opportunity, very big market, whereas on the other hand, there are a few people who feel that this is not a large enough opportunity. So just curious, how do you think about it? What are some more approaches?
So maybe I'll tailor my answer to EdTech, specifically how we look at TAM in EdTech. So in EdTech, we've generally seen that if your ARPU is low, right, and frequency is low or the repeat is low, then the GTM is very tough, right? Because you will get free users for a low ARPU product, etc., but how many of them will pay? At what cost will you be able to acquire the user? So we've seen it works if you have a very low cost organic GTM. Say you're very big on social, YouTube is very big. Let's say how Physics Wala was built, right? Or an Adda 24/7, which is in my portfolio, government jobs test prep was built. So they made a company profitable even with an ARPU of 1,000, 1,500. So people will look at that and then say, okay, can you make this work? And then the TAM becomes much larger because India in general is a more affordability focused country, right? But at the same time, we've seen that if the ARPU is much higher, right? So I would say a scaler, for example, in that category, Interview Vector, which was Interview Vector earlier, or maybe Byju's for their higher price products, the margins work, but how many takers are there? In India, that's the key problem that happens, that are you being able to marry your ARPU into the number of users who can buy at that ARPU? And the cost of you acquiring that kind of user, does it all add up to make the TAM big for your specific category in EdTech? That's the maths, broadly.
Yes. Thank you. But after that.
Sure.
No, they can be more with.
Yeah.
We have right.
It's not person. No, I'm going to.
Or she's fine.
Go ahead.
So ideally, I think we have already connected the boys where I did only very mathematically because a new university plan works at the university, right? New HTB programs as well. And this is a question that will help all of us. So based on the discussions that I had with a lot of investors in the last 7-8 months this year with Open Wave, we have identified a few set of key things that investors are asking specifically in a modern and higher education. That your business is to ops heavy because in higher education when you work at the university there are faculty, you have to invest in curriculum content and all that stuff. And it is ops heavy or the ops light business. It is a high tech or a low bus business. These are the 3-4 parameters on which today investors are looking at the tech market for my understanding it. So what is your view and as the coach view on that? That how do you actually judge an education company today, which may be included if you media as other thing, because we have seen a lot of companies who are unicorn now, they were maybe they would have no ops kind of businesses, but what is your thesis on there?
See, in general, VCs like low ops, low touch businesses, but unfortunately, even a Flipkart, right, probably one of the most valued startups in India, is not ops light. It is a very, very ops heavy business, right? So, and I'm very surprised that you're getting these questions in EdTech because usually, VCs are also very good at another thing. They like to just say something if they are not very convinced to kind of say, okay, this is the reason that I don't want to do it. And it's a pretty vague reason. It might not necessarily relate to your business model. You'll feel very confused a lot of the time. That, I thought I had explained this 5 times. And how come they're coming back and telling me that, this is why you didn't get this. No, this is true, right? And I think it helps to at least level first because it's not like, we're also humans and we know how we operate. So, see, I don't think in EdTech it's about low touch, ops heavy, etc., etc. I think if you can prove that the ARPU, what you're charging, your take rate of that into the number of people you can serve and your cost of acquiring those people makes sense, number one. Second, it is scalable, right? And now for that, even if you have to do some ops, I don't think people are averse to it. They want to see if you have that figured out. And finally, what's going to be the moat? In your model, I would imagine things like, do you have exclusivity with institutions? What is so different about your course? Are you using a different type of educator? How much do they cost? Right? And so what does it do to your margins? Why do students come in? What's the repeat rate? What's the completion rate? I think a lot of these metrics, if they are in place, you should have an easier time. Just go back and look at your model from what I just said. Maybe something there is off. So you hear all kinds of vague answers for why someone doesn't want to put in money now.
Okay, fine.
So,
There was something about influence ventures. Some of the investments that you made, it worked out very well. Some which misfired.
Sure. So InfoEdge is an operating company now which owns internet portals like Naukri.com, 99 Acres, Jeevan Sathi and Shiksha. They are 4 wholly owned operating businesses. In 2008, we first started doing early stage investments from the surplus cash flow of the company. So now we've been investing for 14 to 15 years. Over this time frame, so till 2019, we invested from the balance sheet of the company. So I was leading corporate development. We used to call it corporate development. And then 2019, we set up a separate fund, which is today backed 50-50 by InfoEdge and Temasek. Temasek is the Singapore government's money. Our first fund was $200 million. And the second fund is $225 million. We are likely to close it at about $250 million for the second fund. So over the last 14 years, we've deployed about, I would say, around $500 million or $450 to $500 million across about 50 to 60 companies. We're pretty concentrated. We come in as early stage investors very early. So pre-launch to pre-series A, but we reserve a lot of capital for follow-ons. So Zomato, for example, the first check was 4.33 crores, which was $500,000 back in 2009. No, sorry, which was $1 million back in 2009. And over time, it became a $50 million position for us at cost. Of course, today it is worth, I think, over $1 billion or something. So, couple of investments that have worked really well. Zomato and Policy Bazaar, of course, both went on to be listed on the bourses and have done, the first check in Zomato actually is, I think, some 1000x odd for us. So, broadly, our investing thesis is we only do tech investments. We're sector agnostic. In general, very focused on unit economics, cash flows. Do not require external validation every round. We can come in and do your follow-on rounds ourselves if we like how you're building. Our very patient capital. Our fund is a 14-year fund, which is kind of unheard of in the industry. Everyone has 7 to 10. And it's very structurally done because we think it takes 10 years for a company to go from seed to IPO or to build something meaningful. And we don't want to push a founder during that journey. So broadly, that's about us. Um, and like I was saying, you have to figure out if fundraising, I just generally feel overall has been very glorified. And, the news is very selective in terms of highlighting those who raise large rounds, large valuations. But it does not reveal a lot of what goes on behind the scenes, the terms of those rounds, the pressure those founders come under, what do the economics of the business look like. And if you look at the listed markets today, if I look at, let's say, an Ease My Trip, it's a bootstrapped company which has gone on to do so well, right? 100 crore, I think, profit a year. Founders own nearly all of it. India Mart. So Dinesh Agarwal took a very long time, still held quite a lot of the company. Sanjeev himself went on to list InfoEdge with just one round of, InfoEdge has only raised one round of external capital, VC capital in 2000. After that, no more money raised from outside before the IPO, and then went on to do an IPO. So I feel that in today's environment, I think we are all getting very distracted by what's happening externally and what validation our peers, our family, friends, everyone is thinking that, you're some big person, big guy if you've raised big dollars. But we should all find the answer that works for us and for our business model, especially in EdTech. In EdTech, I don't think, at least in today's environment, especially, there is so much capital available out there because of what has also happened to a Byju's or an Unacademy and others who raised a lot and now they're not being able to prove their economics at scale. So build slowly and build at your own pace and do not build for external capital because you have one life, right? For an investor, they are just going to write you off. But you have one life, so just make sure that your timing counts and you're taking your time and you're not rushed into doing things that you don't want to do. So figure out survival first and then figure out scale. So that is at least my advice in general in today's environment, especially for EdTech. So any other questions? Sure.
I'm really really want tax and absolute technology. So we make drones that are designed today. And right now I'm looking for funds to start speeding up our manufacturing here. So it's very good that initially startups we bought it. And then we started getting grant and and have taken growth from that. So we have been able to grow our technology with the Air Force and DRDO. So we know that the technology and the product is very solid. But the amount of capital we need to scale on the manufacturing side of things is very capital intensive. And I'm finding it particularly challenging to find the right provide that sort of capital. You could give me some advice on what sort of people to reach out and how exactly to drive the spending that capital, especially because in the current market, the companies like we have to give us flexibility. They're not, the way they have scaled up their manufacturing, they can even have in a day. And it's all handmade. They afford the components and then they have a lot of cheap labor to do it. That will work for what we're doing. So we require machinery. So we're going to have to tell me something in that regard.
Yeah, so you're right. In general, drone startups or deep tech startups generally have lesser pools of capital available because I think it requires a lot of investment into the manufacturing capex.
Just to enter proud to your journey is the parties to live. So back then they was made sort of this with relative is passive this of course is bad news. We would have also heard that if we had come to a head. That's what the reason is.
You're all back for the good one.
If you can spam it for it, that would be better.
So that's amazing. I think third year student doing so much, hats off. Much smarter than at least I was at that age. So I think, look, very valid concern. The deep tech and the hardware pools of investment in India especially tend to be pretty limited. So there are specialized deep tech focused funds that you could probably go to. But, grants, government money, very few have been able to break out and scale because that kind of capex money needed and you have a certain time lag, right? So if someone gives you money, they can't see results in the next 1 year or next 2 years. It will take time when you operationalize or commercialize your drones, I'm guessing. So, happy to share separately a list of investors that you could probably speak to. but it is a longer journey. I've generally seen it to be a longer journey than a software company. But if you're passionate about it, you just keep looking for newer and newer pools of capital. Overseas money, actually, unfortunately, right now, newer pools have dried up in India. Otherwise, overseas people are way more open. So try and see if you can raise some HNI money or family offices. They have been backing such startups, especially the space tech startups. A lot of them got backing from family offices. So it's a good idea to try and tap family office networks.
What do you think of it?
It is a liquid, does it mean even so we inside that does it reduce some of the advantages is really
I would not say per se being defense oriented. It is more about being core manufacturing oriented, which requires capex to set up the whole platform.
what it is for difference. There's no number.
So by default, we missed the fact. If was a part of the fact.
Then you would always
For ownership names, so I think they have given a very clear statute that the ownership should be in the majority.
Yeah, that actually plays in your favor. And secondly, people are usually bothered about collection of the payments. So where the government comes into the picture. So if you can clearly show that your payments, etc., that are going to be made, they're not going to be stuck in receivables. Other than that, in fact, I would say it's a moat probably because you're an Indian startup manufacturing in India. Government of India has a genuine impetus that is giving to that. So if your technology is differentiated, everyone knows that defense actually gives big contracts. It's very tough to crack. So if you're in there, no one else will probably be able to come in.
Definitely, what's about the strategic investors in this case, like LNT different, lines or startup different?
Yeah. Strategic investors, even like the family offices of all these companies also, their founders, etc., all have separate family office pools that they invest from. So you can tap all those companies, even founder offices of companies which are not necessarily strategic, right? Let's say you tap Azim Premji's office or someone who is wanting to invest behind things like this. Nandan Nilekani, you reach out to him. So figure out who are the individuals and reach out to them with what you are doing through your networks and keep at it.
And now that we've said this, I have a follow-up question. There is a particular company in Gujarat, in Ahmedabad, that I'm very familiar with. They started working with one of these startup companies and they've been followable. So they've been absorbed into it and it's worked out for the founders financially well. But as far as the vision was concerned, they've been deeply alive. And now what they're doing, and I mean, I got with commercial rating. So more it was just an unfair. They are very specific. So now when you buy a house, it'll be like the better tape is up. So their entire business is wrong. The good thing is that they still hold their IP. So they're getting money that way. And then they got to make certain stuff. So I don't want that to happen because I see myself in this point.
But you will figure out the terms of investment when someone is coming in. I don't believe that the founders got an exit without them saying okay to the exit. They have to sign contracts. They have to negotiate back and forth. So I think it's always two sides to what's happening, what's the story, etc. So don't be fearful going in. Go in with trust. Most people in this world are good. The news that you hear in the media, etc., is just very selective. And like fundraising, news is selective. You also know so many startups are out there who are not getting funded. The way you see funding news, especially in 2021, you'd imagine everyone is funded, right? So don't go by that. Go with a lot of trust into the process. Be sharp about the terms you're signing. What are you giving up? What are you getting out of it? And you should be okay.
Good. So this last word that you made, particularly not for the somewhat more seasoned compared to us, you be found. That can. But our students, the sun here, but when you would be listening to his data, they have done the views in the past week. Or they have to look show, particularly the company of the cyber area or the IT company of the size area. They're sensitive to capital conversion built.
Yeah.
So for him, I see the case part here. You can also see that the engineer that was technical about commodity. We have this, I'm okay that they're about to be actually got the kind of question. What is the sensitization process for that we would suggest for you should be, I think, valid for our student, and some cases will be valid for most of us on this aspect of becoming. And I know that one of he was a senior person went to Singapore, started this company. And then he was looking at terms. He did quite understand somebody what many of us thought as simple terms and would have signed off on something which he would have written as mistake. So ourselves and advise to people to become aware of that. We have to learn the words you would read rather than learning
Yes.
and do that.
That's right. So I think, sir, bang on. We see, based on the founder profile, we see how savvy they are about the commercial terms and the legal terms. Two, three things come top of mind. One is, of course, get a very good lawyer for yourself during the process. Please do not cut costs on the lawyer. A lot of founders do that because lawyers have become expensive. So don't just rely on your friend's family to tell you where the agreement is right or wrong. Go with a lawyer. Second thing is speak to other founders who have raised. That really helps. I've seen that they'll tell you broadly which are the clauses that you should be focusing on. Third thing, if you have raised money before, even if you've raised seed money, HNI money, please rely on your existing investors to tell you where are their pitfalls in this agreement, because they will probably understand it much better than you. And they also have lawyers who are helping them in the process. And fourth is there's no, substitute to reading up yourself. For example, sir, at InfoEdge, we've actually built this whole deck on legal. I'm very happy to actually share it with you because it will help your students a lot. So we've broken down each key term in the legal agreement.
It is not the first conversation that was being
No, this... But we've actually done that because it's a primer for my own team. When a new team member joins us, they are as clueless about legal as the founders. And we give that to them and we tell them, can you please go through this, and then we'll have a conversation about what are the various versions that a clause can have, what is good for the founder, what is good for an investor, where do you find a middle ground here, how do you negotiate a clause. So we actually have a very detailed deck there.
So Professor Vikas, who runs this in this way,
Okay.
she's your contact for.
Yeah, I'll share that with you.
commercial 1 over person.
But I think for you, you have all these books here. It's up to you to find out or get hold of them in the interstitial spaces. Okay? And 2 or 3 of them would give you, each of them would give you a different angle to this perspective. That you need to learn. Because if you're given a book on the law you want, but the experiences can be good starting point, or some will be there for it.
Yeah.
And of course, Vikas shared a couple of new videos on nothing to you for example. I shared. Then we did, yeah.
Yeah, draft term sheet even we can share. And especially the presentation that we've done, it actually talks about the legal clause, explains it in plain English. What is it saying? And then what are you supposed to get as an investor? What are you supposed to not give as a founder, etc. I'll just change that deck a little bit and I'll share, I think, simple plain English. All your students will then understand basics of legal.
Thank you so much. That will be great. Thanks.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah.
This thought has been mentioned very strongly. Everything that we're discussing, ultimately, every event now is becoming a constant negotiation. What I saw at a physics problem, match problem, it will over that way. It is a constant negotiation. Business process, learning process, and everything indicative. I hope that you did not just know. And the point, because of that, is we are constantly going up the decision methodology. Other day I was studying mathematics, I was thinking I was going on a computational route for reaction. But we are going up the decision methodology. We are constantly having many factors multiplication. We constantly having relationships. We are constantly having patterns. We are constantly having knowledge progression taking. We are constantly having interpretation, judgment, and ultimate decisions. I'm becoming a judge. And that is really actually a concept of PPT of if I that is a new processing. It comes dominantly for mind and what, and that listening everything happening those questions. And that's the opportunity of processing. If there's one thought of that, it will be a great document in 90%. If I just want to say, of course, we're
So this needs 1 week going for us and the video for the set both team. Which about given something very profound. In this universe, it will open capture world. We're basically right from first year. Students get involved in a project which involves we get semester as to go into with that go from semester.
And when it comes to me, we have either rope up with good. That's easy. But he's not getting on the Southeast Cup. He's saying, give us a problem. To solve before we solve, we went that back. But we had it there maybe 20 from third year, 40 from fourth year, the whole batch in first year. Some are doing math, some are doing some we pick up. But that works as a team. But their manager managers provide the problems. So that right from first year, they're bringing to see the world of work while they're doing the side of the something. So, and they do.
Sir, that is fantastic. I think collaboration, teamwork.
This question, which is saying every student should get exposure to everything. So the choices that they make are not blind. They type up the side, okay, these are right, what's about that? So the first year he was to see the third year person talk about it somewhere. When second year he goes to the bench, it tells something. I think this work collaborate to constructivism is a thesis of learning. If they put rules in the residency camp, but they start with only 20,000 students. So somewhere I think as we had looked at our students in the entrepreneurship thing, involving them with these youngsters that started. Maybe a better way for them then to go into Watson lab and learn something. Provided they're looking at being more entrepreneurial, more not just entrepreneur, but entrepreneurial, that all senses that well. So that will be a try way and we got something good. Great, so go on, what we have for lunch at least?
Yes. Yeah, for that dinner.
Okay, so again, all of you have the first break of per time at lunchtime. Which is promised to happen to be able to stay there, where should you have his view or his view of life. And so what's it back to you?
So thank you, everyone. And actually, I really appreciate, I think everyone was very open. A lot of people asked questions and they had shared their own experiences. Thank you so much.